Nikke is a game about making your favorite androids fight scary machines. Before the King minigame should also be the same thing, but what if it wasn't? What if we weren't allowed to use any Nikkes to beat all 18 levels? And what if I went further and beat those 18 levels without even getting any upgrades? Okay, that's the premise of the video. So, how do you even do anything without Nikkes? Well, we have these gun, pulse, cannon, and ice towers that are much weaker and do not have special skills. To achieve victory, finding out where to place towers when and distributing money between building towers and leveling them up is critical. Notably, leveling towers up is not an upgrade. Upgrades are these permanent perks that you can set up before entering a level. They have many effects, like increasing damage, range, buffs, decreasing cost, and more. I will try to beat levels without them first, but if it is impossible without them, then I will try again with upgrades. If I still can't win, then the level is impossible. Getting into the first level, I noticed that some towers were already placed for us. However, they cannot be sold. Hopefully, no pre-placed Nikkes will appear in future levels. Now, about the towers. The gun tower has a high fire rate. The pulse tower has a high damage and critical hit that ignores defense rate. The cannon does area of effect attacks, and the ice tower gives a slowing debuff. Every rapture enemy does a different amount of damage done to our base if let through, and the bosses deal 999 damage, which will instantly kill us. The very first level has a boss, but the challenge is still very easy right now, and we win. In 1-1, I very quickly put myself in a bad situation by buying an ice and cannon tower. This prompted me to find out what the best tower is. Cannons let many enemies on the first wave through. Guns did as well. Pulses did a tiny bit better, letting 4 through instead of 5. With some better positioning of the first pulse towers, I was barely able to beat the enemies in time. This made me realize that pulse towers are the best, as I was able to beat 1-1 without taking any damage. In 1-2, I remembered one more mechanic. By starting waves early, you get money depending on how far away it would have been if you didn't skip. This is useful to get more money and decrease downtime. By leveling my towers to level 2, I was able to beat the level with relative ease by spamming pulse towers. 2-0 was another easy level, but 2-1 is when things get serious. This first wave spawns many enemies that the pulses can't handle. Letting raptures through means that we don't get money from defeating them, meaning we have no money to make our defenses stronger for the second wave and we die. At this point, I second-guessed my strategy of using pulses, so I tried to use the other towers. However, this made the results worse. Switching back to pulses, I eventually got lucky enough with the critical hits to barely scrape up enough money to build a defense. By the time this happened, I had just 1 HP left, and I was able to hold onto it and beat the level. In 2-2, there are multiple bosses in a level for the first time. But the level isn't challenging compared to the last one, since we can now bring towers up to level 3. Since level 2 was the previous cap. Upon starting 3-0, I immediately noticed that Marion and Kilo were already there as pre-placed Nikke units. Of course, as pre-placed units, I am unable to sell them. Does this mean we lose instantly? Well, I think that if we never use their skills and they never fire a single bullet at the enemies, then we can still call that a victory. However, this means we will instantly lose if the enemies get within their range. Things go well until wave 7, when a bunch of enemies get spammed so the story can happen and Snow White, Rapunzel, and Scarlet can save the day.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Bro, I don't want you here. The rest of the level accounts for you having 3 max level Nikkes on your side as well. However, that's how things play out without upgrades. With enough material to max out the pulse upgrades, we can try again. And the same thing happens. Wow. With cannon towers, we lose on the very first wave, and with guns, we also lose at wave 7. Ice towers also don't save us, so it seems like this level is impossible. Even after resetting the upgrades and taking all of them off, 3-1 is still easy compared to 3-0. 3-2 is easy enough to beat that I can do it without taking any damage. Who knew that having more time to beat enemies and also being able to let some of them through makes the game easier. Hopefully in 4-0, story doesn't happen. In this level, we unlock options for level 4 towers, and the pulse can learn to detect enemies through camouflage, or it can launch area of effect attacks. Many enemies, including the boss in Devilia, have camouflage, so picking that option is better for now. We win the level, but lose in the cutscene after a video game moment. In 4-1, these levels give us enough money at the start that makes the early game easy. The Raptures can't really overcome this, so we win. The Pulse Tower is still my GOAT, so 4-2 isn't too troublesome either. In 5-0, there's only one way for walking enemies to go, making it obvious where to put the defenses.
Your strategy is so painfully obvious that it's laughable. All your careful planning will crumble in the face of our sheer might.
"5-1 is just 5-0 with another bridge, and it is just as easy. 5-2 has 3 bridges now. Ooh. It isn't much harder. It feels like every level has been either very easy or impossible. In 6-0, Crown has been pre-placed. Uh-oh. On the very first wave, I lose right away because some enemies walk right toward her. With some more strategic leveling up, there's barely enough damage to take them down right before the Raptors enter Crown's firing range. But then the same thing happens on the second wave. The route from the bottom middle that goes right to the top brings enemies to Crown very quickly. So many resources have to go right by that entrance. However, the top left route is also dangerous for the same reason, meaning a perfect distribution of resources is required, and perhaps even some luck with the critical hits. After much trial and error, I conclude that it is impossible without upgrades. However, with upgrades, I get on this run. With pulses right by the problematic entrances, I just barely keep them out of Crown's reach wave after wave. The pulse bombs keep killing all of the fast little guys before they become a problem. Even with that damage, enemies still make it to Crown on wave 7. On wave 8, even more enemies reach. And on wave 9, the boss destructs fire away from the top left lane, which means even more enemies reach her. With barely any slots to put towers in to defend the top left, this level seems impossible. Even though it would totally be possible if Crown just wasn't there. Removing the upgrades once again, 6-1 seems like it will be 6-0, but without Crown, just what I wanted. However, there is a new problem. You are definitely not supposed to be this weak by this point, so the enemies have too much health to deal with. Enemies just slip by all the time, especially enemies that come from the short path on the top right. The pulse bomb, the main method of damaging the enemies so far, also sometimes bugs out and doesn't realize there are enemies right in front of it that it should be shooting. Like, look at how it's just doing nothing, even though there are raptors right in front of it. What a good game. Wave 10 is the furthest I made it in half an hour of attempts. That isn't a lot of time, but there is very little strategy to change. And I don't think that getting lucky with the pulse bomb working and the critical hits activating makes a difference. The moment I turn on upgrades, I win first try without taking any damage. It's amazing how what seemed like a difficulty spike got crushed the moment I started playing the game somewhat properly. Turning the upgrades off again for the final level, 6-2, the level seems much easier at first since the raptors don't have super short routes to the exit. There is an extremely large number of camo enemies, meaning level 4 pulse towers have to be built as quickly as possible while not skimping out on defenses elsewhere, especially to not die from Indivilia spawning on wave 6. After getting past her though, the defenses are too good and they hold out for the rest of the level, meaning every level is complete. So, can you beat For the King with no Nikkes? No! While 15 of the 18 levels are possible without Nikkes or upgrades, and one more can be done without Nikkes but with upgrade, both 3-0 and 6-0 require the Nikkes to contribute to the battle because they are forcefully deployed. If everyone took a vacation, the kingdom would have been fine, but I guess they are just a bit too dutiful. Unless I am bad at the game and you can do better. But anyway, since you watched until the end, consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Okay, have a good one.